Welcome everyone to our Field Day Academy advanced training, our pre-training. We will be recording this, so just for everyone's benefit, this is being recorded, and we'll make it available to the participants here as well as to the SCARC members and others who may not be able to join us tonight. I know that several had expressed an inability to join us tonight for the presentation, and that they would be able to watch the recording for us. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and make a couple of introductions. You know us, but we'll do it for everyone's sake here. Clint, you want to introduce yourself first?
My name's Clint Miller, K0GR. I am the communications manager for the club.
And what qualifies you to teach Field Day Academy?
I was dumb enough to come up with the idea with you. Been doing Field Day around 2006, I believe, because it would have been right after Hurricane Katrina that I decided to actually do something with my ham radio license. So 15 years now.
Nice. Well, and as Clint notes, the idea of Field Day Academy actually hatched last year. We had originally planned to hold Field Day Academy with an overnight camp. We had already reserved campground spots out at Ledges, and had really everything lined up when the pandemic here hit. So it threw a bit of a wrench in things, and when situations started to look a little bit better, we decided that we could safely hold the event, and as such, we proceeded. It's a little pared down version than what we had originally envisioned, but the idea here is to give folks who may not be super confident with HF or even experienced with HF an opportunity to get your feet wet with HF, to understand a little bit more about Field Day, how the setup goes, why we might do things a certain way, and how to make all of that work. And then also to get you the hands-on experience with the mic, so that when it comes time to do it, that you feel more comfortable. And to do that in an environment that's a lot lower pressure, and give everyone a chance to really do that. So that's really the impetus here behind Field Day Academy, and the reason that we're doing it here. So Clint's going to start us out here with a little bit more. I guess I kind of stole your thunder on your first slide there, but we'll start here, Clint, and I will share my screen. And
you never introduced yourself and said what made you qualify.
Oh, I didn't introduce myself, did I? Okay. Well, so I'm Paul, W0YR, for those that don't know me, and I've been licensed since '93 and playing Field Day in various forms since pretty early on in the hobby. I had the benefit of a very active club where I was first licensed out in Sevenland that would do just a huge event. I mean, it was overnight camping for the week leading up, and they'd have special break-off stuff for the ladies to do their events. And Field Day for me has always been a great event, and I wanted to ensure that everyone had an opportunity to, number one, feel comfortable, to number two, get a chance to get some experience and enjoy Field Day, perhaps in your own way, but to get as much enjoyment out of it as I had. So I guess that's what qualifies me. Is I've been around a while. I like Field Day, one of my favorite events of the year, and I'm hoping that this event helps break the ice for folks who may be less experienced or less confident, and do that. And I think honestly, combining a Parks on the Air activation gives you that kind of simulated experience that is the closest thing that we can come to for Field Day. So let me go ahead and share my screen here real quick, Clint, and we will share. All right, and you should be seeing my screen now. I'm going to give control here to Clint, and we will fire you off with the slideshow. Now you're actually going to see the wrong slide, aren't you?
Can you
let
flip
me
it at the
change.
top? I think that second option at the top was the flipper.
Let me go back there.
There you go.
There we go. Outstanding. So the slideshow's yours, Clint.
All right, good. Well, welcome to Field Day Academy. And let's see how this works. Do I have to use the clicker? I do. All right, so we're trying to encourage more participation at Field Day. We're trying to get newly licensed people experience on HF because a lot of them don't know if they want to make the effort to upgrade. And so this Field Day is a great way to learn what HF can be. And we've realized there's a need to teach how to set up a field station and log using contesting software. And that's always been a kind of a hurdle every time we set up Field Day. The new people, they might be able to do the HF stuff, but setting it up in the field, they've always kind of struggled with what were you guys doing there? And then a lot of struggle with, well, I always log on paper or whatever. I've never logged in the software. So those are some of the stuff we wanted to cover with purpose. So today we're going to cover what is Field Day, how to scout an HF station site, the positive and negatives of various field deployable HF antennas, how to get support ropes and trees. We're going to talk briefly on, and then the other components that you need to kind of build an HF station with computer logging. We're going to go through the radio and software familiarization, so you kind of have an idea going in to the event on Memorial Day, what we're going to be doing with the software of the radio. There's the protocol for making HF radio voice contacts, the procedures for how to log contact in the contesting software. We've got tips for making contacts and holding a frequency while calling CQ. We've got a lot of example QSO exchanges from recordings on Field Day and POTA activations. And then we're going to give you guys a bunch of stuff to download Field Day and POTA that you can just kind of practice on your own, just writing down call signs and exchanges. If you want to fire up software and log it, go right ahead. That would be a great practice. Just some stuff on the part 2 part. May 31st is the event out at Ledges at the Oakwood Shelter. So if you're familiar with Ledges, it's essentially where the upper road ends and the one-way begins up there, to where you go the one-way road to go down through the Ledges Valley Trail. And there's a big wooded area with a shelter and a restroom building right there, and that's the one we rented. 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. is the demonstration and hands-on station setup. We highly encourage everyone to show up to that and kind of understand how we do the stuff we do to set it up and why. And then we've got the 1-hour time slots for operating the HF radio station, and everybody's had a chance to sign up for those. So on part 2, the first part is viewing several field deployable HF antennas. We're just going to kind of lay some stuff out. We might still have them coiled, but kind of get a feel for what's out there and what things look like. We're going to go and survey the site and decide where to put the antennas, kind of make decisions on what fits where and why. Pneumatic antenna launcher use. We'll have my launcher out there, and we'll let a few people shoot some tennis balls. And then we're going to do supporting HF antennas from trees, installing and properly rolling coax without damage, because yes, you can damage coax by rolling it up, and that gets under Paul and I's skin when we unpack after a Field Day event and realize that we got a big wad of coax that somebody just rolled, threw over like an extension cord, and it's a big mess. So there is a right and wrong way to do that. And then setting up an HF field station with a computer and logging. We're actually, have you guys help us plug everything together. So some logistics.
Hey, Clint, your audio has been cutting out just a little bit. So I don't know if you've got inbound video running.
As much as we can, and so that's how we'll be kind of set up, and so if to get a feel for what field day's like, this is going to be a lot like. Well, I do, but I got to see the slides, right? So
That's true. That's true.
Am I getting better yet? Oh, my camera
was
turned
good in the
itself on. I didn't
beginning, and then it
realize. Is
got
that better?
really bad briefly.
Am
there.
I any better?
It's better
Okay,
now.
how about
yes.
now? Okay, I think my camera turned itself on for some reason.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, so we're gonna set up as planned to mimic a field day station as much as possible. We're gonna be outdoors. You may want to bring a lawn chair for when you're not operating, just so you don't have to sit on the picnic table. But you might want to bring some bug spray, sunscreen, sort of your personal thing. There's a lot of shade out there, so that may not be too big of a problem. Food and drink are on your own. So if you're working around the lunch shift, you might want to have a sack lunch or something. And then if you think it would help you, you can pick up a headset with a microphone, and it may be desirable to free up your hands to log. Our plan is to have you guys log yourself in the digital software. So if you're a typer with two hands, that doesn't leave any hands for to hold the microphone. And so that's something that, if you want to do that, go ahead. Otherwise, it will just be, type with one hand or set the microphone down, type, pick the microphone back up. It all works. We've all done it. So just a little preference there. If you really think you want to get a headset and you want something reasonable, Paul's got some ideas on some potential ones there. My audio still coming through okay? Okay. Click. So what is Field Day? What's a once-a-year contest sponsored by the ARRL where hams go to remote sites and operate for 24 hours. Purpose remains today as it did in the beginning, which is to demonstrate the communications ability of the amateur radio community in simulated emergency conditions. And so officially, the ARRL doesn't want us calling it a contest. It's an operating event. But it's an operating event. We keep score and we rank people. Sounds like a contest to me. Groups use the opportunity to practice their emergency response capabilities. A lot of them do that. And so the goal is to contact as many other stations as possible and to learn how to operate our radio gear in abnormal situations and less than optimal conditions. So this is not you sitting in your air-conditioned shack cranking up the points on CQ Worldwide. That's not what Field Day is. It's we're trying to make a lot of contacts in field conditions and kind of learning how to adapt and overcome. So it's always the fourth full weekend in June. Mark your calendar for the next 1,000 years. That's when it's going to be. And it's evolved into the largest on-air operation of the year. So you talk to any hams and you mention Field Day, and it's either they love it or they stay the heck off the air because it's just chaos on the radio waves. And some of us just love that. There's signals everywhere. And in 2020, event logs were submitted by over 10,000 clubs from across the U.S. and Canada, and participation was over 18,000 individuals. So a lot of single stations, a lot of two-people stations, maybe not that much. So that was a huge year in the number of actual logs that were submitted because of COVID. And so there was 1.2 million QSOs. Okay, so what is Field Day? Well, it's a picnic. It's a camp out sometimes. It's a great practice for emergencies. It's an informal contest to some, just to see kind of how you do, and you keep score and you don't get too serious at it. And other people, it is a full-on serious, everything you could possibly do from the moment you can contact somebody, all in. And so each group, kind of treats it as what they want to. It's a literal show and tell exhibition. We invite the public usually to come out and look at our stations and explain what's going on, give it a try, make a couple of contacts if you want. And so that makes it great publicity for the public, for the media, for our served agencies. And most of all, we really always try to have fun. If we're not having fun, it's not worth doing. So Field Day 2015, this is a kind of a cool picture. We borrowed Mary Greeley's trailer. We had a couple pop-ups. We set up a portable tower with a tri-band beam. We had another mast in there. So some pretty cool stuff that would go on. This is kind of just a great summary slide of what field day kind of looks like a lot of times. So there's a bunch of different classes. Class A is clubs that are portable. So we'll probably be Class A for our field day because we'll be portable and we'll be a club station. Not too many batteries. I never hear anybody say battery on the air really for field day. So I think maybe they enter that way, but they don't say it. So don't worry about the battery part. Class B is just 1 or 2 people running portable. So I guess a couple of people get together and set up. Very similar. Class C is mobile. So you're out driving around for field day. Class D are those home stations, and there was a lot of Class Ds last year because everybody's staying at home, and they allowed the Class Ds to work each other. It used to be for field day you couldn't, work other Class D stations just to try to encourage people to get out of the house and go out to the field. But Class E are home stations on emergency power, and so those are kind of fun. You've got it, use it. And then Class F, we used to do that a lot. We'd go and work at the Red Cross or at Iowa State had a EOC backup on campus, and we'd go set up adjacent to that and have an emergency operations center activation with Class F. And so we always append the number of the transmitters to the beginning of your class. And so your class may be 1 alpha, 1 or 2 beta. And so it's the number of transmitters that are going at the same time plus your group here of the letters. And so the exchange for field day is your operating class and the ARRL or the Canadian sections. And an example would be a 3 transmitter Class A station in Connecticut, which also has a GOTA station, which I'll explain, and an extra VHF station would send 3 Alpha Connecticut. And so there's 3 separate sites that are transmitters, and then the GOTA and the VHF are kind of the extras that we don't count. You can kind of add those on. And so, we also, if you're on phone, it'd be 3 Alpha Connecticut is what you would hear on the air. And we're going to be doing phone for field day, or for GOTA this year. Sorry. We're going to be doing phone for POTA this year for our class. So everything's going to be based off of phone. DX stations send their operating class in the term DX. You don't hear a lot of DX on field day. Most of them stay away, but a few of them get adventurous and come out and play. So if you got the latest QST, if you're an ARRL member, the little field day insert had this on the back section of it, right across from the picture of George and Paul's daughter. If you happen to catch that, she's in the latest QST. And I was just floored by this. This is such a great handout. Usually these handouts are grouped by call. And so, the 0 states are Iowa and Nebraska, and they lumped us all in these zeros. And it's like, well, people move around. The calls don't always match. So if you get a 7 call, you don't know if it's somebody in Iowa or somebody in Utah. So I would never really like that. So when they came out with this, it's like, oh, now I can work with this. It's alphabetical. And when you get to California, then there's this whole slug of different California stations. But so if it's like, oh, I think that's one of the Californias, well, then you can kind of narrow it down here and know what the abbreviation is. So we'll probably have this handy at the field day site, printed it off, hanging up, sitting on the table, whatever, just so that you can reference it if you need to know what a section is. And so I kind of created a little zoomed in section here to kind of see how that works. And so everybody's going to be sending these specific abbreviations. And so there's very standard abbreviations they're going to send. You're going to log the abbreviation. So you want to maybe do a little pre-study before you go out and make sure you've got these locked to memory. So scoring. CW and digital both get 2 points for each contact. Phone only gets 1. I'm not sure why. I always thought it should be equal, because you could probably crank through more CW and digital, the average person, than you could a phone. But I think they're trying to encourage people to do more than just talk on the radio. So there's a power multiplier, and it's got to do with how much power you're using. Typically, we get a power multiplier of 2. We're usually running 100-watt radios. So you take the number of QSO points times the power multiplier to give you a score, and then you add in your bonus points, and that gives you a total. You don't really have to know this, but people are just kind of curious what we're up to with that. So there was no section multiplier. So don't get hung up on, I haven't talked to anybody in Hawaii yet, because that contact counts the same as somebody in Texas. So don't preference one section over another because there's no section multiplier like a QSO party, for instance. Okay, so I'm not going to get into all these bonus points, but just know there are plenty of ways to step up and help out with some bonus points. If you want to try to take one of these on that we still haven't filled, it's just a great way to add 100 points each one into the log. And there's 2 pages of them even. So pretty good opportunity. They're really pushing us with these is to get out, do some publicity, don't just sit down and operate radio. Let's make it more than just a contest. So that GOTA station, you heard me mention that. It's an opportunity for any technician licenses, newly licensed amateurs, other generally inactive licensees, and the non-licensed persons to experience firsthand the fun of amateur radio by allowing them to get on the air. That's the GOTA part. And so it uses a different call sign than the other transmitters, which is kind of a bonus so that you really won't have that many concerns about having duplicates. Everybody's going to be pretty much new, so that we're going to be cranking through the contacts on the main stations, and all those same people are still available to work through the GOTA station if that's where you're going to operate. And so you kind of see in there who actually gets to qualify for that. If you've been on HF in the last year and you aren't a new licensee, then you're probably not qualified to operate the GOTA. It's scored the same in that there's just based off the number of QSOs. And then there's a bonus that if one person makes 20 contacts, we get an extra 20 points. So 19 contacts is worth 19 points. You make one more and all of a sudden you've got 40. And so that's pretty cool to be able to double with your bonuses. And you can get up to 100 per operator. So, and there's up to 500 bonus points available for that. So, so let's talk about how to scout an HF station site. Whenever I start thinking about operating somewhere, if I've been there or not, I always try to do a lot of online reconnaissance. And so there's a lot of maps online, just general hand-drawn, line maps. There's Google Maps has a lot of aerial photography. There's Google Street View, so you can get the view from the ground. Google Earth tends to have a little better resolution than the Google Maps that you could turn on the satellite view. Google Photos, that's like people submit photos of places. So if you're going to operate at a shelter, hey, guess what? Little Johnny had his birthday party there last year, and there's pictures of the shelter. And guess what? There's an electrical outlet in the corner. You can see that. So now all of a sudden you've got all kinds of information. You haven't even been there. And then one of my favorites to really check out is the County Assessor GIS site, and I'll show you that. Oh, I clicked to go back. Okay, so I downloaded the park map for Ledges, and there's the Oakwood Shelter at the kind of near the entrance to the park. And so you kind of get a feel for, okay, well, it's wooded based off the shading. And there's a restroom there, and there's a picnic. But this isn't really that helpful of a map, but it's at least gets you in the ballpark of where where the shelter is, so you go scouting. And so for instance, when I was looking at where this shelter is, I noted that there's a parking lot right here, and so there's a main road and a little road coming off to get to the parking lot, and that was part of the feature I used, and you'll see why in this. So here's that road and the parking lot road. So that told me that the shelter is right here. It's not obvious. This is not a great map to site to do some scouting with. It's just too overgrown. This is just a regular Google satellite image. And so looking at this site, normally I would say this isn't really a great site for field day. There's so much trees, it's hard to get the antennas up through if we're trying to get them up on top of the trees for wire antennas. So we will struggle, I will tell you that, with getting antennas up in this because it is so thick. If I go to the GIS site for the county, they tend to take leaf off pictures post snow. So a lot of March photography. And so here you can see the shelter house. the little path leading off the road. The restrooms are in here. And so this kind of gives you an idea of parking and restrooms and everything that's out there. And you can see it's got a lot of big trees. And so this was our site we're going to operate off of. But that's about the best photography I could get for Boone County. Luckily, Story County's got one up on them. And so we're going to check out the actual field day this year site because it was a little better to scout. So the Roland Park, at Erickson Park in Roland. And having been up there, I knew that we were going to be operating out of this little open air shelter pavilion thing, but I didn't know, I couldn't remember trees or anything about where all this was. And so that was kind of what I was cluing in on. I know this is the restroom building up here, and I think this is where we're going to be parking. We can't park along the highway there. So not bad. There's some open space. You can do some stuff in the opening and kind of, you know, spread stuff between trees. And so it's not bad. So Story County GIS, this is the assessor page. And so, you know, here again, leaf off, get a better idea. There's an evergreen there. There's some trees here. You can see the space. You can see through and kind of tell what things are. And so that's pretty interesting. But if you look at this word right here, pictometry imagery, and this is the kind of the thing that Story County has, they pay extra for the pictometry imagery. So if you click on that, what they've done is they've got a little bit of an angle on the camera that they fly. And so that you get these angled photos. And so you can kind of see from the side. And they're a higher resolution, and they're usually leaf off. So you can get a good view. You can see individual trees. And so when I'm looking at this site, I see this line of trees all in a row. And I'm thinking, okay, that's going to be useful for maybe like an NFED, and we'll show you that. And then I see these open spaces, and it's like, oh, we can stretch a dipole between those two trees. You know, here's another tree, and maybe we can stretch another dipole going this way. So then we can get broadside to the dipole. This one would be great for the East and West Coast, and this one would be great for Canada and Texas. You know, knowing that north is up on here. Here's the little north symbol. You notice that there's these arrows on here. And it's like, oh, wait, what does that do? And so if you click on the arrows twice, all of a sudden you can get a different angle. So now we're looking south. We're pointed south. And so you see that line of trees. You see the opening. And there's typically, you know, a decade of different years of the same photography. About every year they fly these and they load them in there. So you can, in that little clicker up there, you can actually pick different years to look at this. Ignore these blue lines. That's just the county marking the property boundaries. And there's obviously an error in here. So when we go set up out here, this is also helpful to know that, hey, there's going to be a property line here. This is the neighbors. And so we better not put anything over in their yard. So I just like to kind of scout through this and just get a feel for what we've got to work with. So back to that other photo where the angle, you can really zoom in and kind of get a feel for stuff. It's got pretty good resolution, I think. You know, you can kind of check this out, and there's some measurement tools usually. And so it looks like there's a pole there. So I don't know if we're going to be dealing with power lines or if that's just like a light. But I tend to just kind of scour photos and get a feel for what I'm getting into before I actually have to go out. Okay, so we're going to talk about the positive and negatives of various field deployable HF antennas. And so this is your kind of classic dipole. So the yellow in here would be your ropes. So yellow would be ropes for all of this. The blue is going to be your antenna. The black line is your coax leading off to your station, wherever that station is. And then the black box is basically just to signify that the antenna has some sort of physical thing that, you know, has to be dealt with. There's a connection here. There's sometimes this is a balance, sometimes just a little block of plastic, but just know that there's some sort of a little bigger device that you got to deal with when you deploy these. And so there's a classic dipole. The two sides are equal. An offset or fed dipole. It's just not fed in the middle. That's pretty much it. There's variants that have a coax hanging down and another box down here, you know. So there's different options in these, but you know, it's pretty much the same. You're looking for two good supports spread out and room in the middle to get the thing up. If there was a tree right here in the middle, it'd be awfully hard to get that wire to lift up between there. It would hang up in the tree and it would get kind of held down by the tree instead of held up by a tree. If you got some really tall trees and they're open, you can put in an inverted V, and that works. The valuations, not slightly, they're a little more rational, but they're still great antennas. If you have a military mast, then you can start doing stuff where you can use, this would be like an 80-meter antenna, and this other short blue wire could be a 40-meter. And so, you know, if you're looking from above, those would form an, and then, you know, you can feed it with a ballon up here, and the coax runs down. And so that's a pretty interesting antenna. We've deployed those a few times, especially like emergency communications. Those are not usually quite as high, and they work pretty good for infrared, but that's a whole other topic, to shoot the signal up into the clouds instead of out to the coast. Next one, infed half-wave. Okay, so an infed half-wave is just a wire that you just throw out, and the end of it really doesn't even have to be anchored, other than you. Don't ask me why I know that. Trying to drag this box through one tree was not going to work, so don't try it. So you got to kind of plan ahead to how you're going to put this one up so that you don't put everything on the wrong side, you know.
Hey, Clint, you were a little broken with your audio right there. Do you want to repeat that first part of what you said about the infed half wave and how it gets deployed?
Yep. So I would recommend you kind of find this line of trees. You can stretch it between two trees if you want, and you can kind of two-hop it, but it's a little more logistically challenging to kind of two-hop it. But you basically just shoot a rope over the whole row, and then tie the blue line, the antenna on this end, and start pulling the rope, and it just kind of feeds its way across. And then you end up with a pile of rope at the end and tie it off. Okay, so a vertical. We haven't done a lot of verticals at our field days, but a lot of hams do. And so those are basically typically a 43-foot vertical piece of metal. A lot of solid tubing works well. If you've got a tree that's taller than 43 feet, you might be able to hang a wire from a branch 43 feet in the air. And then you have to have a series of ground radials to make that effective. But I've seen a lot of portable verticals out there on field day sites, so that's another good option. These have a really low angle takeoff, and so you get really far out to the coast well. A lot of good DX type antennas, not so good for working the Midwest. A lot of the signals don't go up and down very well. They kind of go out a lot. So good and bad with this one, depending on who you want to talk to. Okay, our field day, we've deployed a beam a lot. And to do that, usually Dave Fitz will come out and set up a tower, 40-foot tower. And then, he'll guy it out like this. And then he'll climb up there and lift this thing up on there and set it on top. And there's a rotator. And that's quite remarkable. It's really a luxury to have a beam that's rotatable. And I think that we've typically used a 10, 20, 40, I think is the beam, but I might be mistaken. I think there's been a few ones out, but it's typically 20 and 40 is where it gets used on these beams. Sometimes 15 might be in there, 15 meters. So not sure. We haven't done one in the last couple of years, so it's kind of hit and miss when we'll do that again. But it's kind of neat to set up a temporary tower. So how do we get the support ropes in the trees? This is my favorite method. And basically, this is a pneumatic antenna launcher. So we pressurize this cylinder here, and typically 25 pounds works pretty well for most shots. If I'm going to run a line of 4 trees, I might get up to 35 if I really need to get going. This sprinkler valve holds the pressure, and when you use this trigger to just dump the pressure on the backside, it releases all the rubber stopper that lets the air flow across. And then it just kind of runs through, and then the tennis ball's down here, push down to the bottom, and the pressure fires it out the end, and then it tows that that yellow 100-pound fishing line out, and takes the line out, and then these balls are weighted, not so much to launch. We don't need them weighted to launch. We need them to fall back down through the tree and to drag the fishing line. And so we've got some experiments. We're going to try to put some thicker stuff on and maybe cut out some steps, but we're going to need heavier tennis balls to do that. So that'll mean a little higher pressure to get that heavy ball to fly. So here's some other tools in my box of support ropes, launcher stuff. So this is what I use for an air compressor. That's pretty portable. Here's again another picture of that it's a bow fishing reel that you put on the end of the barrel there. Here's a couple of the tennis balls. These are actually from Target. They're dog squeaker balls. They aren't full-size tennis balls. They're a little smaller. And I fill them with BBs. Although doing the math, I think U.S. currency might be cheaper. Just shove a bunch of pennies in them. Pound for pound, that's probably as cheap as you can get, is to use pennies. So this is what I typically use for the mason line to tie onto the fishing line. We use the mason line to kind of intermediate line, and then they've got spikes on them. You're probably wondering, why are these spiked? And that's because I like to set the line off by myself and then just walk away and go to the other end and start pulling, and it'll just unreel on its own. So in this configuration, it wouldn't unreel, but because it's a T, you can stick it off to the side and it'll unwind vertically. This is one that's untested. I found this it's a kite reel, and I put the mason line on it and then built a little the reel handle. So this we're going to test out for the first time at our POTA activation on Memorial Day and see if this works any better. The problem with this one is it takes forever to crank. This has got a bigger crank. The handle's not on here. And so we think this will reel in a lot faster and save some headache. And then this is our typical line. It's just 550 paracord that we use a lot of paracord. And so that's kind of our line of choice. You can use other stuff. This stuff isn't, it is not UV resistant, so it's not a permanent solution, but we do a lot of field operating and it works just fine out in the field for temporary. Okay, so there I am with my antenna launcher. And step one, launch the fishing line in the tree. So you want to clear the tree very well. You don't want to try to get hung up in it, at least if you're a novice. I tend to do some crazy stuff like shoot through trees. I have hit branches and have it bounce back at me, but typically we go over stuff. So, launch the tennis ball. There you go. Step two, you're going to kind of pull a little tighter, and then you'd come on to the end, take the ball off, put the mason line on here. And if you're by yourself, you're just going to stick that on that spike and leave it kind of sitting there ready to unreel. And then you're going to reel it in. And you kind of pull that mason line through the tree. Now, when it goes through these branches, that knot that you tied the two of them together is going to be a key factor. If you use a big, ugly knot, it's going to get hung up on them little branches, and you may break that fishing line. And when we've tried to shortcut this and tie the 550 paracord on to the fishing line, the knot's too big, and it will not pull through the tree, and it will break. So as much as we've tried, we cannot cheat the system. So we're hoping to cheat in not having to use fishing line. If we can fire mason line over a tree, then we can cut out a step in this process. So I started on the left, I shot the fishing line, pulled the mason line back. Now I tied on to the end of the mason line with a rope, and now I'm going to pull it back. And so here comes the rope back over the tree and back down through, and that big old knot on that 550 cord doesn't get hung up because the mason line's a lot stronger and doesn't break. And so we can pull that fat knot through the tree branches. And so that's why we kind of take that multi-step method. So then this assumes that the end of our rope is loose. We also use a rope and a reel, an extension cord reel, and that works really well. So in this case, the end of the rope is here and the antenna needs to be tied on here. And so if this was the reel over here and the end of the rope's over here, well, I'm going to put the antenna up backwards. And we've done that and had to start over. or tie a rope on this end and pull it backwards. And so those are all mistakes that you learn. You got to think about the steps and where to shoot from. If you need which side of the tree you need to start with. So here we go. Here we're pulling the wire antenna up, and then we're going to stop right there because this might be half of a dipole. And dipoles tend to work better if they're not in the tree. So we'll stop short of the tree branches, and when we lift it up, it'll be up above the canopy and not touching, and we'll kind of go for that. So that's sort of the steps to how to get a support rope in the tree. Okay, coax. So coax got this outer jacket. It's got this braid shield. There's the foil shield on a lot of the stuff anymore. They're putting foil shield. This is what they call the dielectric, which is either foam or like a plastic. And then there's a center conductor. And so, you know, if you kink this, you can kind of smush this dielectric too much, and the center conductor gets too close to the braid, and then the coax starts to not function as well as it would otherwise. So we want to avoid kinks in coax. There's really two different sizes that you'll see at Field Day. The big stuff and the little stuff. So this is like 0.4 inches. So just under half an inch in diameter. And you'll see RG8, RG213, LMR 400. It looks all the same. You got to read the little label on it to know which it is. Most people can't tell from just looking at a black line laying on the ground which is which. The thinner stuff, which is more like 1/4 of an inch in diameter, is either RG8X or RG58. And so we'll use a bunch of different stuff. You can get away with this thin stuff on HF frequencies. 6 meters starting to push it. You get into 2 meters and higher, and you pretty much need to use this better stuff, or you're going to have a lot of loss. It's just the nature of RF. So we can get away with a lot of RG8X at Field Day, and definitely this is lighter, so we'll put that as the vertical going up to the antenna. And then since we have some RG8, we'll go ahead and use it because why not? And it saves us a tiny bit of loss on HF frequencies. Okay, the components for an HF field station with computer logging. You're going to need a semi-modern radio. If your radio is not modern enough to have an interface, then it's not going to tell the software what frequency you're on. It's not going to know that the software's not going to know that you switch bands. If you don't have a modern radio, that just means you got to remember in your logging software that you got to change those things manually, and I guarantee you're going to forget. So that's the semi-modern radio. It's just a computer interface is built into it. Well, if you're going to do computer logging, you got to have a computer, and then you're going to have to connect the radio and the computer with some sort of interface. And so a lot of the new ones have like a USB with an emulated serial driver in it. And so you just plug the USB to the back of the radio in the computer, and you're off and running. There's a CIV system that ICOM uses, or a CAT system that Yaesu uses. And so it's just a special cable and their own kind of proprietary communications. And sometimes you can still find these serial RS-232 with a DB9 on the end. And so you typically need an interface box, like a Rig Blaster makes those, is one brand, to kind of do an interface between the radio and the computer. You're going to need some drivers for whatever you're using, maybe 2 drivers, one for the cable, one for the radio. And if you're going to log, you're going to need logging software. So we're going to do some radio familiarization, and I'm going to give my voice a break.
All right. Thanks, Clint. Trying to think if I can. All right, that'll work. So let's jump into some familiarization here on the radio. And this is the actual radio that I'm loaning to the club for the phone station for Field Day. And it will be the same one that we'll physically have at our Parks on the Air activation. So this will be a chance for you to get hands-on with the exact radio that will be at the Field Day station. We'll also cover some of the basics with it here tonight. So I think you can all see my pointer here, just a few basics. This is a semi-modern radio. It's for its day, it was a very, very good radio. and it's since been surpassed. It's a little bit older, but it also is a radio that is something that I'm willing to loan out to Field Day. So there's kind of that compromise between the two. Power button up here in the top left. If you press and just press it, it will turn on. If you press and hold it, it will light red, and that means that it's actually got a timer. And after 2 hours, it will turn itself off. So if you see the red power button, that's an indication that that you need to turn it off, turn it back on. Some connections here. We won't get into the back panel. Some of the controls here that we'll talk about just now. Tuner, monitor, noise blank, noise reduction, adjustments for the audio frequency, and the RF gain. We can also adjust the noise reduction level. It's got some digital signal noise reduction. On the bottom are some little small knobs that we can turn for mic gain, RF power, compression, and then a couple that are related to CW that we won't worry about right now. Mode buttons are at the bottom. And then on screen, we've got function buttons here for F1 through F5 that correspond with the black portion here across the bottom. And so those menus will change. That's pretty typical with the ICOM radios, is that on-screen menu will change as you navigate through them, and we'll show that quickly. We've also got the similar buttons on the left side that correspond to the features here. You'll notice that this radio has some lines through the display, makes it a little less readable, but it's a pretty common occurrence with this particular radio. Most of these functions here you won't need for field day operation, with the exception of potentially this one right here if you're tuning around a little bit. TS, or tuning step, is a great feature that will help you. We'll talk about that and what that might do and what you'd use it for. The main VFO knob, some filter adjustments here, and then receive incremental tuning, or what ICOM calls Delta TX, or transmit incremental tuning. So let me fire up my camera here for the radio itself, and we'll show the on-screen radio, and I'll highlight some of these as we go through. So I've got the radio turned on here, and that video should be coming through for everybody. Let's just see if it is.
Did you change the highlighting, or did I?
I don't know if you have.
I'm just wondering if everybody else is seeing the video prominently, or if they're seeing the presentation.
Yeah, that's a good question. Is everyone seeing the video or the presentation? You can add in the chat. There's a little conversation box at the top.
It's only the presentation. There's no video.
Okay. Let me stop the sharing then, and we'll switch over to the video here.
I clicked on something. I wasn't sure if that was me or you.
Oh, okay.
Mine worked.
All right. So when you talk, it switches to your video. It looks like on my second feed here, but this will work for us. I think we're good to go. So this is the actual radio live. It's a little less fantastic view than the fancy brochure there, but you'll see it's exactly as I had indicated. You will see these horizontal lines here across the display. Those unfortunately kind of come and go. They are just a consequence of the style of LCD that's in there, and just something that we live with. So I want to talk about some of the tools that we can use within the radio, and these will be common across various radios, but implemented differently depending on who the maker is. We've got some tools that we can use to manage interference. And the first of these is up here in the upper right, in what ICOM on this radio calls twin passband tuning. And what that allows us to do, it's a little hard to see here, but where I'm pointing here with my stylus, there's a little indication of the center frequency with a vertical line, and then the shape of a filter both above and below. And by adjusting up and down, I can change the shape and position of that filter. And let me show you with some audio here what that sounds like.
A few contacts I've had with him, you know, on the radio. That's really good.
So that's with the filter now very, very narrow. And with both of them in there, I can actually shift that both below, which is great for lower sideband, or above, which makes it hard to hear because we're listening on lower sideband, and that's to the high end there. So what we can do is that functions both as an IF shift when we turn them both the same direction, or we can adjust the pass band. So if we had a station, and you'll hear it in some of the audio examples, on field day, the bands are packed, stations just right next to each other, and you'll have a station that's parked almost right on top of you. And by narrowing your bandwidth here, you're then able to hear only those stations that are calling you and filter out the stations that aren't. Another tool that this radio has that some radios, more modern radios typically have, is an auto notch filter. So if I push that button, the light turns on, and it's less noticeable because we've got a very strong signal here, but it will filter out the additional noise that is above or below the frequency of interest. And so auto notch is there. The other tools that we can use, if we had an impulse noise, let's say that we were near you know, some lights that were causing a repeated pulsing noise. In that case, noise blanker is a great tool that we can use. It's really only effective against repeated pulse type noises. So you'll turn it on and you won't hear much of a difference here if our station's still around. Sounds like he might have disappeared. Looking at the spectrum scopes, looks like we got somebody just below us here a bit. We'll go down and see if he's still there. So with that, you can tell the noise blanker really isn't doing anything because I don't have a pulse type noise. However, we've got some atmospheric noise, and we can clean some of that up with the noise reduction feature. And let me show you what that sounds like. So I turn noise reduction on. And I'm turning the outer ring of this adjustment right here, the noise reduction. And what that does, there's going to be a happy medium in there. If you turn it too high, it starts to sound over-processed, and the audio will start to sound watery and kind of weird. You heard that there just a little bit. Take it to the point that it's watery, and then back it down just a little bit, and it will help clean up the noise. So again, let me play that example. So you can hear where it helps to clean up the background noise that's there, make it a little bit easier to listen to. Some other tools that we can use, we can adjust the AGC, or the automatic gain control. Right now it's set to fast. We can turn that to slow. And what that will do is that will make the gain, the automatic gain, respond slower. Typically, slow is slower mid, depending on the band conditions, is where we'll typically want to listen. If you've got lightning crashes off in the distance, turning it to fast will allow the gain control to return back to a normal level much more quickly, and make it so that you don't lose the audio that you might otherwise lose. One other thing to note here is there is a setting here for preamp. Typically on the HF bands, we're going to want preamp off because all it does is bring the noise in as we're amplifying it. The other one that you might see here is compression, and you'll see comp is currently on, and we can toggle that either off or on with the button on the side. The adjustment for compression is down here. Typically mid-scale is about right. The procedure here is essentially that what we would want to do is to look for ALC readings with compression on, with the mic gain adjusted properly, to not exceed this red bar area, or we risk distortion on the air. So we could jump here and change the meter over to ALC and adjust if we wanted to, but realistically, if you would leave the mic gain where it's set at the mid and on the compression at the mid, that's there. The compression will allow you to potentially, especially on noisy band conditions, to cut through some of the noise a little bit better. A few items here to touch on real quick, and then we'll jump into the other items that I've got. Let's get back to a signal here that we can actually hear. Looks like our guy might be back up on 92 here.
Oh, he called me and he said, would you like to?
So there may be a case that we're hearing a station, but he's maybe a little bit off frequency. And we can adjust by turning on the receive incremental tuning. We can adjust where we're listening. It doesn't change where we're transmitting. The reverse of that is if we turn the Delta TX on, we can change where we're transmitting versus where we're receiving. You won't use those frequently, but especially the receive incremental tuning, or RIT, this guy right here, may be helpful in cases where you've got a station that's calling you that's a little bit off frequency, and you want to just quickly tune down so that you hear him just a little bit better. You can turn on RIT, dial down, listen to him, hit clear, turn it off, you're good to go. I mentioned the TS button, and what you'll see is when we press TS, you'll see a little arrow appear above this unit. So with TS off, my tuning steps are pretty fine. You see how that's tuning through the band there. If I turn TS on and the arrow appears, you'll see that it tunes very, very quickly. And so that just adjusts the tuning step. If you want to quickly move across the band, let's say, for instance, you're doing some search and pounce activity, meaning that you're hunting individual stations. You get to the top end of the band and you want to go back down to the bottom and start again. You might hit TS, dial down, turn it back off, and then slowly work through the band again. This radio also has an internal antenna tuner. You can see that it's turned on here. It would be turned off here. And to actually tune, we would press and hold the tuner button. If it finds a match, it'll stay green. If it doesn't find a match, it will turn itself off so that it looks like this after the tune cycle. But if you turn it here back on, it will match to the best it's able to, and usually get the SWR into an acceptable range that you can work with. I think that's all that I wanted to touch on there with the radio aspect here. Let me jump on to, yes, go ahead.
Bail off. Your tuner, you don't have to hold the button to tune it, it just auto.
It is a press and hold to tune. So let me just demonstrate that real quick here. Let me
and mention the clicks.
What's that?
The clicking.
Yeah, so the clicking, it's already got some memories in its thing, so it's going to auto move itself up as it tunes through the band. It's going to tune itself for that particular match. But to make the tune cycle work, let me go ahead and do that here real quick. W0R. So that fast, what it did is it went ahead, it found a tune solution, and it's now put it in memory. So as I tune through the band, it's going to remember, as long as I haven't changed antennas, where that's at. Does that answer your question there, Clint?
Yeah, it was hard to hear, but don't be surprised when the radio start clicking, especially when you tune. That's all the relays latching in and out.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point there, Clint. Any questions before I move on from the radio, the actual interface that's here? All right. we're going to take a break from the radio for a minute, and we'll jump back to Clint, and he's going to talk through some of the field day on-air lingo here. All right.
All right.
And you're back.
So we're just going to go through some of the terminology. I've mentioned some of them already, but we just wanted to kind of put them all in one place. You're going to hear a lot of CQs, and that's just shorthand for calling any station. And so that is only said by the running station. And so if you're not the running station, don't say CQ. That's kind of the easy way. So, you know, that's just the kind of the old holdout abbreviated text that people use. And so it's just what's common. And so the calling, you'll hear it, or the running station is basically someone who's holding a frequency and calling CQ. So they're going to sit in one place and they're just going to keep saying CQ and their call sign, CQ and their call sign. They might say what contest they're doing. They might say contest. And that kind of tells you, oh, they're looking for contacts quick. You know, they don't want to rag chew. You know, they're looking for the contest. And so that's why they're saying CQ contest. Search and pounce mode. Well, CQs are looking for people doing search and pounce. You have to have, you know, one with the other. And so the search and pounce people are tuning the band. They're listening for CQs and they're going to respond to them. So if I'm turning the dial and I hear somebody calling CQ contest, and I know what contest they're doing, you know, the field day, everybody's doing field day. There's nobody doing anything but field day on field day. POTA, we might have a few people that are doing other stuff, but you're going to basically, you know, listen and say, oh, that guy's looking for contacts. That's who we're looking for. So you're listening for that CQ as you go tune. Okay, so you're going to hear exchange. Somebody says, I need your exchange. That's what the class and section information we're going to give to the other station. I believe we are going to be 2 Alpha in Iowa. That's going to be our exchange. And so we're going to have 2 main transmitters. And we're going to be a club set out in the park. And we're in Iowa as our section. So class and section is those add up to your exchange. Okay, phonetics or phonetically. Somebody's going to say, oh, give it to me phonetically. So if you hear someone who's just saying the letters and they can't tell if you're saying C or D or E, they're going to say phonetically. And so you should always start with a standard phonetic alphabet. If you don't know that, it is worth your time to learn that. And I encourage you to, if you're riding in a car, or driving a car, just try to read some of the road signs phonetically. See how you do. Just kind of start throwing it in there because it is a little hard to use. But without phonetics, on air HF is really hard to do. So highly encourage it. If you get, there's times where somebody's just not getting you. They can tell you're there. They're getting 1 or 2 of the letters in your call sign, but they're really struggling. Sometimes alternative phonetics can help. And so it's more something to try after, saying the regular phonetics 6 times isn't working. And so an example might be Washington, number 0, Yokohama, London. And you want to be very, crisp and enunciate those whenever you're doing phonetics so that, people can try to hear you a little better. You're going to hear the word Roger, or sometimes it's Roger, because with fading and the bands and noise and everything else, they might not hear the first one. So you'll hear a lot of Roger. And that's just somebody saying yes. Because yes is a lot kind of hard to hear on the air. It's pretty quick. And so that's just confirmation that the other station, is right. That they ask you a question, you answer Roger, and that's confirmation. You're going to hear the word dupe. And so that's a duplicate contact. And it basically says, hey, we've already logged you on this band in this mode. And so this contact isn't going to count for anything. And therefore, we're not going to log it. Now, if you don't have it in your log as a dupe and they do, I think it's acceptable to ask them, what time did you have? Or, if you really do, because otherwise we don't have the contact and they do, and we're going to miss one. So if that's truly the case, then, you can get a correction from them. But, you could just at that point log it on our end. That way they're in our log and the times don't match, but at least we both confirm that we've contacted each other and we have the proper exchange information. So some Q words here. QSL. So you heard like QSL cards. QSL is just an acknowledgement of receipt, and so we're confirming that that we received it. So it's kind of the, hey, can you hear me, or here's my information, and you say QSL, meaning I acknowledge that I received your information. And some people also use it for yes instead of saying Roger. And then you'll hear somebody say QSL, and another person will say QSL, and it's like, so the first one was a question, and the second one was an answer. And so you'll hear that a lot, and so you can't always really tell that there's a question mark there, but just in the scenario of what's being said, if you'll kind of pick up on that there's a lot of QSLs getting thrown out. Things that you don't hear a lot, but that you can, is QRM or QRN. And so that's just noise. It's either man-made noise or natural noise. So there's just, you'll hear people say, oh, there's a lot of QRM. And it just means that I'm having a heck of a time hearing you because there's just so much noise. And it could be other stations, could be lightning, could be, the aliens, whatever. There's just a lot of noise. A QSB, you'll hear a little bit of that. That just means there's some fading. So you're going up and down. And you'll hear on our recordings, there's fading, there's people in and out. And so that's why you do a lot of repeats. Okay, 73. You hear a lot of 73. That's another one of those codes. 73 is best regards. And basically, it's a trigger that we're done and that contact's over. If somebody says good luck to you, that means they're leaving. They're going to go, contact over, move on. QRZ, you'll hear a lot of QRZ. There we go. Paul, you lost the presentation there. It's back now.
Yeah, it helps if I don't move my mouse. Sorry, folks.
So QRZ, it's always Z. I don't really know anybody that says QRZ. Everybody says QRZ. And that's who's calling me. Or contact over, next station. And so you'll hear people make this mistake, and you really should not try to. It's only used by the running station. So if I'm calling CQ, we make contact. When I'm done, I'm going to say, probably my call sign QRZ. That basically means this is my frequency. I'm going to be here. I'm listening for the next station. If you're search and pounce and you say QRZ, everybody's like, wait, whose station, whose frequency is this? Because are you listening for the next contact, or is he listening for the next contact? So try not to say QRZ if you're not running or calling CQ. The next one here. So here's the phonetics. Learn the phonetics. Try to get good at it. Definitely learn your old call sign. And since we're going to be using the club call sign, it's Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima. And that is the club call sign. So you're going to be saying that a lot. We typically will write the words Yankee 0 or Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima. We'll write Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima next to W0YL on a piece of paper and stick it next to the radio, because if you can read it, it's easier to remember to say it. So we'll give you we always for field day do the crib sheets. Even I need them because that's not my call sign. And so I struggle with saying the right call sign sometimes, especially at the beginning. Okay, protocol for making search and pounce HF radio contacts. Okay, so one station stays on a frequency and calls CQ. And so, from a productivity standpoint, you're going to make more contacts saying CQ than you are search and pounce. But that's just kind of what happens. So you'll see CQ, KB7, ABC, CQ. That's a trigger that somebody's looking to make a contact. So if you're doing search and pounce, you're going to tune the band, listen for those CQs. The beginners usually capture the running station's call and exchange before responding. So basically, if you can hear that person CQing and make contact with somebody else, well, guess what? You can capture their call sign, their exchange, and get it written down or even pre-logged before you ever contact them. And so that's a technique a lot of people will try to do, just so that in the heat of the moment of making the contact, you already know the answers to the test. You have their information. And so immediately after they stop transmitting, and that's what people really struggle with, is when are they done? And the idea is as soon as they let off the mic and you don't hear their voice anymore, and you know that kind of by their cadence, they have a rhythm. And as soon as they stop their rhythm, you want to squeeze the mic and talk. And the reason is, a lot of times the first signal you hear, if it's a pileup, is the first thing that sticks in your head, and that's the station you work first. But there's also the benefit of saying things twice, so that maybe you're also, if you're not the first or the strongest, you're the last. And the last thing he heard was Lima. Oh, I heard a Lima. Go ahead. So that's a technique too, is to say it twice. And don't put much space in between them. The idea is just to get one of the letters of your call sign in there, and kind of let them sort of understand that. And I really encourage you to stick to phonetics unless they're really clear and you have a feeling that you're also really clear with them, and they'll be able to hear W0YL. Most people can't, and so you need to use the phonetics. Okay, so this is so once you listen for that. Wait a minute, I gotta make sure I'm on the right section here. Yeah, I'm still on search and pounce. So this is still, you're doing search and pounce. So if you say your call sign, W0YL, W0YL, or YR, they're listening for that. You're gonna listen to them say your call sign. Oh, yeah, W0YR, 1 Bravo, Utah. So that means that they're one person set up in the field in Utah. That's what they're gonna say back. And you're gonna respond with, oh, our exchange, 2 Alpha, Iowa. And really, some people are very efficient at field day and they want to keep the unnecessary words down to a very minimum, and other people get a little chatty. And so it's just, there's all kinds in field day, and so that's just, the words in the quotes are probably what you're going to be saying at a minimum. The guy at the running station is going to confirm the contact by saying 73, good luck, QRZ, or just say QRZ, or they might not say QRZ at all. They just might say 73s. And then, you're kind of like wondering, is this guy done? Are we, can the next guy call? So I like it when they say QRZ, there's zero question that he's done, next station. And so when you hear 73, good luck, or QRZ after your contact, that means hit enter on the keyboard, put that one in the log, spin the dial, look for the next guy. So let's go through the protocol if you're going to do the calling or running. And so you're going to find an open spot, and field days, sometimes that's pretty difficult to find an open spot. And so you kind of just try to squeeze your way into some sort of a little gap there, and, key down and say, is this frequency in use? And wait for a few seconds, because maybe somebody's sort of planning on using it and they just took a breath, and they aren't transmitting at the moment, or, they're between CQs. So you don't want to steal somebody else's frequency. Be a good neighbor. And so then you start calling CQ using your call sign and some indication of purpose or target station. So typically what I'll say is CQ Field Day, this is W0YL, W0YL calling CQ Field Day. And I go through it pretty quickly with that, just because, I want to get all that information out there. And so that's I talk kind of fast for my CQs. The idea is you're just making a bunch of noise to hold that frequency and have other people tuning along, hear you call in CQ, and want to talk to you. And so, if you're calling CQ and then you wait, all of a sudden you might hear KB7 ABC. Oh, another station. Okay. So what do I do with that? Well, when you hear a station, you want to respond with their call sign so they know that you hear them and you want to make a contact. Because you might have 5 people calling you at once, but you only heard that one station. So you're going to say KB7 ABC, 2 Alpha Iowa. I think I wrote that wrong. Yeah.
You got my call sign in there. So
well, I should have wrote. Yeah, I should. I think I should write KB7 ABC in here. Please copy 2 Alpha Iowa. A lot of people say please copy. It doesn't take very long, and so it's pretty clear that that's what you're giving them. And they should respond with their exchange: 1 Bravo Utah, 1 Bravo Utah, 1 Bravo Uniform Tango, Uniform Tango. If they're really struggling, you're going to get it a bunch of times. You may ask them to repeat it a bunch of times. Give me just your section, because I can't hear your section. But I got your 1 Bravo. And so once everybody has the information, you want to you get a feel that, okay, I've got his information. He's confirmed. He said QSL to my 1 Bravo Utah or whatever. Once that's happening, then as the calling station, you're going to say 73 and end with QRZ or QRZ from W0YR. Or whatever your call is, and so that's sort of the procedure. What I went through is very similar. It's just It's flipped to which role you're taking in the conversation. Okay, I think my part's mostly done here.
I think it's almost completely done here.
Good.
So I'm going to stop sharing here briefly, and I'm going to share from the other PC that I've got already set up here. One moment here, we'll share the screen. So what you're going to be seeing is the screen of the PC that we're going to be using for Field Day, and it's the exact PC. It's a Lenovo laptop that actually belongs to Story County. We've got a couple of those that have been assigned to Story County Aries, and we have their approval to use them for our purposes for ham radio. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this so that you're not getting the weird multiple whatever going on there. The desktop is very, very clean. For Field Day, we're going to use the ARRL Field Day contest log. To launch it, we'll simply double click on it. If you're taking over from another station or another operator, you'll already be up and active. It'll already be running. You'll see something very similar to what you saw in the familiarization slide there, where there's a bunch of stations already in the log. We'll show what that looks like. The first time you open it up, though, the way that I've got this set up, and you can see the check mark here, got to find the right mouse, to display this form on startup. You can make it so that it doesn't. I like it so that it does. It lets folks, when you're firing it up, make sure that the call sign is correct. In this case, it's our club call. Class required for Field Day, 2 Alpha, Iowa. And then there's an optional field here that we will actually use for our Parks on the Air activation that allows you to get credit for the contacts that you're making. And as we change operators on Field Day, it's good practice to go ahead and make that change, and I'll show you how that's done. First thing that I would recommend doing when you sit down at the radio for the first time, as you're taking over your shift, is to go ahead and make that change. That way that you get credit for them. We report them out and we say, hey, here's who so-and-so and who did what. So we just click done, and we're connected here. Now, if everything's talking to the radio, and this already is, we'll get the band information here, we'll get the mode information here, and we'll get the actual frequency. So you can see that right now we're at 7192, and if I spin the VFO knob up, the update frequency is about every 2 seconds, and you'll see that now we're on 720475. Just happens to be where we're at. We've got our call sign, class, and exchange down here at the bottom, just so that we see it. There may be instances that, especially if you have, let's say, a power failure, the radio turns off, we had to refuel the generator and there was no power briefly, it might lose connection. So in those events, just make sure that you're connected. One thing that you can do is jump into the settings and rig interface. And in this case, we've got it set up to run an ICOM radio on a USB port that's designated as COM3. And one thing to keep in mind is that you don't need to be super fast with these communications. So something, for instance, 9600 baud and a radio polling rate of 2 seconds is more than sufficient. We don't need to go super fast, and we don't need a super high baud rate because we're passing just a very, very small amount of data. It's really only the mode and the frequency, and that's it. So just know that that's there. But we can click test here, and if it's working properly, we'll see the frequency and the mode pop up here. When we're all done, we can hit done down at the bottom, and we'll be on our way. Most times, you'll see that there will be a setting already in there. So if you click load settings, it'll bring up, and here's an ICOM file. You could load that and see if that fixes the issue, if there is a problem. But just know that that's there and something to look at if you're having trouble connecting. Logging is really very, very easy. It's as simple as recording the 3 pieces of information that were part of that Field Day exchange: their call, their class, and their section. And so we'll demonstrate that here on screen. So let's say, for instance, that I'm calling CQ Field Day, and Whiskey Zero Yankee Lima. Clint comes back with his call sign. Clint, what's your call sign?
Step 1 on mute. K0GR.
Yep, there you go. All right, so I
Kilo
just
Zero
called
Golf
CTM.
Romeo.
What's your response?
Kilo Zero Golf Romeo.
Okay, Kilo Zero Golf Romeo, Whiskey Zero Yankee Lima, 2 Alpha Iowa, QSL.
QSL 1 Bravo Iowa.
Roger, 1 Bravo Iowa is 7-3, good luck. QRZ Whiskey Zero Yankee Lima. So I'm 1 Bravo Iowa. I hit enter and it's in the log, and that's all I needed to do. His call sign, his class, his section. And if you type each one in, so let's just pick another call sign here. I see that we've got Kent on, so we'll do NU0I. Tab takes us to the next field. I find that that's a lot easier than trying to work with a mouse, especially with a touchpad. Just tab takes you to the next field. If you've goofed, shift tab, don't know who that is. Shift tab takes you to the previous field, and you can make your edit there. That's an easy way to keep your hands just on the keyboard and doing what you need to do. So NU0I, and we'll call him a 1 Delta. He's at home, and we know that he's in Iowa as well. So it's tab between, and then when I'm all done, all I have to do is hit enter, and he's in the log. So you can see your contacts up above, and normally they'll just fill up. In this case, it's set to see the last 20. We could select all, which would give us a list that we could scroll from. But really, as we're running, we're just wanting to see what's there. We could also filter to just the current band and mode. So let's say, for instance, that we're just looking at 40 meters phone, and we want to go back and look at them all. That's there as well. So really what that does for us is just give us a few options on how to view. For the most part, we're not going to be concerned about that as we're going through things. One thing to note is, let's say, for instance, we made a mistake up here and we realize it after the fact. Clint was actually a 1 Echo. He was running on, he was at home instead of a Bravo out where he was, and we missed the exchange and goofed it up. I just highlight the row in question. I hit edit, and in that case, I could come back, make the change, click done, and it's edited in the log. The times that you're going to need to do that are pretty rare, but just know that that is something that you can do. Now, let's say, for instance, I've done my logging. The next, or someone else has been logging. I'm the next to take on a shift. I mentioned the operator change. So the operator tab up here at the top, you'll click operator, type in your call sign. So in this case, I'm taking over W0YR, PNC, and done. And what that will do is every contact from then on will get credited to me. So that's really our Field Day software familiarization. We're going to use a software package that is similar, and yet it's a little bit different from a from the same developer. Clint, yeah.
Log me on 20 meters.
Okay.
I want to show them what happens. No, you gotta get on
actually,
20
let
though.
me do this. 1 second.
Well, I guess you could put me in. You could try to do a dupe also.
Well, we'll do both here. So we're on 20 meters. Here's K0GR. Good point. So if you've made contact with that same station on another band already, or if your networked station, and in this case, will be networked with the other station that's there, they'll be doing CW or digital. We might be doing sideband over here. If either station has worked them, their class and section, as it was previously logged, automatically pops up. And at that point, you've got the information. All you have to do is hit enter. Now, let's say, for instance, that we're cruising along and it's K0GR again. Oh, possible duplicate. Well, I hit him over here and, oh, yeah, he is a duplicate. And it will prevent us from logging him because he is a duplicate from there. So you'll see that pop up. We already worked K0GR on 20 phone. And so it will prevent us from doing that. Good point, Clint. Thanks. Anything else that I need to touch on before I jump over to the N3FGP AC log?
No, just like I said before, ignore those sections. The little green red, that's sort of the side distraction.
Yeah, it's there. They turn they turn blue when you work them, but like I say, it's a distraction. So I'm going to close this software package, and we'll open up. It's called Amateur Contact Log, and I own this software. I've got a license to it. We're going to use it for our field day activation. We'll also use the AC log as our log for parks on the air. And the reason that we'll do that is its interface is very similar, even though we're logging just a little bit more information. So you'll notice here, same kind of information. Call pops up when we first operate or fire it up. I enter my operator and I click done. We'll maximize this up so that everything's all nice on screen. And at that point, I'm ready to set up. You'll only have to do this the first time. So over here for the initial setup, we're going to set up, it's called MySigInfo and MyPark, and they're fields that end up in the file when it's all done. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're simply setting up something that's going to be carrying over every single time. So we're working along, we work Clint. I receive a 5.9 from him, I send a 5.7 to him, and I hit enter and I log in. Let's do Kent here, NU0I. He gives me a 5.4, I send him a 5.5, and he happens to be working at a park. We'll talk about this here in just a minute, about the park to park and how to work those. The SIG info is where we would enter park to park information. So Kent's over at Barkley State Memorial Park, just north of Boone. And we would enter in Kilo 4656. And you'll see here it already pops up with his name and country. There's a database that's already back behind the scenes that's being loaded. Band, mode, frequency, the MySig info, all of the information here that we would normally see is being logged. Now you'll see this needs C exclamation point. That's just saying that it needs confirmation. It needs to be confirmed. Ignore that. Honestly, you could really ignore the new, but that's there as well. We're going to hit enter, and he's in the log. If we try to log Kent again, it's not going to pop up new, and we see that that's the case that's there. We can zero that out by hitting escape. It does allow you to log duplicates. Really, I'm not too concerned about that for our parks on the air activation, but we're going to go through and do that. If, for instance, you hit escape and everything gets zeroed out, know that you can click on the MySig info and MyPark. Just click there. You don't have to type anything after that initial one record, and everything else will be populated. Same principles, same everything, and that's really the basics here of the AC log program. So we're trying to keep it as similar as we can for a similar type experience. So it's call, it's signal report, and then it's logged. We don't even technically need their state. It's just make a contact, log it, and move ahead. So that's really it for the software portion of it, for the parks on the air activation. I mentioned a couple of things there that just to talk about, and I think I touch on them here in a slide. Yeah, we'll get back there with some of the POTA lingo here in just a minute. So let me switch over to the other share here, and we'll close this software down. Give me just a moment. All right, we're going to jump over and go back to sharing and include sound this time, and we'll share my screen. So we're back to the presentation, maybe. There we go. And what I've got here are some QSO tips and some example audio. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each introduction, and I'll play it through once. Know that when this presentation goes out, you can click and play these and listen to these multiple times. So an example is we always want to be a courteous operator, but if you're calling CQ and you've been out there and holding that frequency, own your frequency, hold your frequency. Maybe hold is a better term than own, because we don't really own it, but really it's about taking charge and being assertive. And what you'll hear here is a case where Clint's been calling CQ. This is from Field Day 2017. In fact, all of these are from Field Day 2017. And he has somebody come in and starts calling, hello test, and he just continues to call CQ and hold the frequency and continue to make contact. So let me play that clip here real quick.
I got several stations there. Okay, I'm getting a whiskey station.
Kilo Delta 0 Zulu, uniform golf, testing.
CQ Field Day from Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima, Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima, Field Day.
So that's an example where Clint he doesn't talk to the guy, he doesn't engage with the guy, he's doing his thing, but Clint lets him know in this case that he's there, it's time to call CQ in his normal cadence anyway, and so he continues to do it. The next one up here is an example where Clint mentioned sometimes non-standard practices. This is a case where the bands are kind of tough. It's hard to hear, and Clint has had trouble hearing the number in the call sign. It's a 7 call, and what you'll hear is this station counting. And what that gives you is an indication when he stops counting that's the number. So let's say it's a number 3. He'd go, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3. And so it's an example there. In this case, you'll see 7, and let me play that example.
Okay, Alpha Juliet, I don't have a number in your call. I need the number in your call. Okay, it is a 7.
So there's an example, and Clint confirms that he hears the 7, but that count up is an example where if you're having difficulty getting the other station to hear your number, that might work. Clint mentioned non-standard phonetics. We typically don't do that. In this case, this operator just rolls with it. We roll right back. Good practice. You can interpret in your head, but it's easier as you're running if you're not trying to translate their Yokohama to your Yankee. Just repeat it back as you heard it and then log it accordingly. So let me play this example.
Hold on, W0 station.
Whiskey 0, Portugal, America, Norway.
Whiskey 0, Portugal, America, Norway. Please copy 2 Alpha, Indy Alpha.
So Clint just rolls with it. Whiskey 0, Portugal, America, Norway. I don't know where he got the phonetics, but it's there. If you're not hearing anything, don't be afraid to toss out a CQ again. So here's an example of that.
QRZ from Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima. CQ Field Day from Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima, Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima, Field Day. Was there a whiskey station? Hotel Papa station, Hotel Papa. Whiskey 8, Hotel Papa.
And that's the end of that clip. So this is an example where he called QRZ. You do hear a short snippet of the call sign, and maybe it's not enough. You're not sure what you heard. Don't be afraid to just call CQ. It's not long enough that they're going to abandon the frequency or your call, and it gives you a chance to rehear that call sign if you're not sure that you heard something. Here's an example, and this really comes with some practice. So this is not something that you're going to need to have to know right off the bat or anything, but know that you can stack up calls. If you hear multiple calls, sometimes I'll have a notepad with me and I'll write down one or two or three. I'll work one and then I'll call the next one back after I've ended the contact with the first one. And you'll hear some of that audio in some of the Parks on the Air activation that I shared. Here's an example where Clint stacks them up and you can hear he works one call and then jumps to the next one.
QRZ from Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima. Okay, November 8, standby. Kilo Bravo 2.
Kilo Bravo 2, Sierra Delta Romeo.
Okay, Kilo Bravo 2, Sierra Delta Romeo. Please copy 2 Alpha Indy Alpha. 2 Alpha Indy Alpha.
Roger, roger. Please copy 2 Bravo Sierra Delta. 2 Bravo Sierra Delta.
2 Bravo Sierra Delta. QSL?
Roger, roger.
Okay, thanks for the contact. November 8 station, go ahead.
So here's a case where Clint heard one call clearly, and he heard enough of another one that he was able to say, November 8, stand by. He works the first station and then comes back to that November 8. And if you hear the whole call sign, you can do that as well. So just an example where you can kind of stack some calls up and increase your rate and efficiency there. This one's a little maybe hard to hear initially because it's not real clear, but what you'll hear is him trying to make contact with someone, a little bit of difficulty in understanding, and then you'll hear him adjusting in what would on this radio be that twin passband tuning, and you'll hear it get a little tinnier, a little quieter, and a little more focused partway through, and then at that point the call really kind of jumps out at you. So listen to this one and see if you can hear that.
Alpha Juliet station. We have Alpha Juliet 7 Foxtrot Delta. Is that correct?
All right, so there's an example of that, and actually I think I cut that one short. There we go.
Alpha Juliet station, please come again.
All right, so I cut that off prematurely. I apologize for that. I was making sure that I was queued up for the next step here. But you can hear that narrowing or a little bit of tinniness there, and then the call sign's easier to hear. Now, it might be harder to hear long term because you're listening in, it's a little higher pitched, but that can help in a case that you're having difficulty catching a call sign to narrow that filter in and remove some of the extraneous noise that'll help you hear it better. And then this last example is one, it's certainly not a knock on whomever was logging with Clint, but it's an example that if you have a logger with you, it's really a team effort. Logging is really important here as well, and you'll hear this in this example. Oops. Helps if I click play instead of advancing the slide.
CQ Field Day from Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima, Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima, Field Day.
Whiskey 4 kilo.
Whiskey 4, I believe.
This is Whiskey 4 kilo. Whiskey 4 kilo. Please copy 2 Foxtrot, Alabama.
Whiskey 4 kilo, correct?
111. Whiskey 4 kilo. 2 Foxtrot, Alabama.
Okay, I got Alabama, and what was your class?
2 Foxtrot, Whiskey 4 kilo.
Okay, we're trying to log. I got a new logger. So Whiskey 4 kilo, 2 Foxtrot in Alabama. I got it. Thank you for that. Okay, you want our 2 Alpha Iowa. 2 Alpha Iowa.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right, so there's an example where, again, that logger, you can tell that Clint's distracted. he's paying attention to the log and trying to make sure that it gets in the log and not focused on returning the call there. Just an example that logging can have an impact in your on-air performance. All right, so here's some examples. We've talked about the Field Day Exchange. What I want to do is compare really the Field Day Exchange with a Parks on the Air Activation Exchange. And I've got a couple of short excerpts of a couple of examples here. So what you'll hear with the Field Day Exchange here is Clint calling CQ. He'll confirm their call sign in their exchange. He'll signal the end of the QSO with, in this case, a QRZ. And there's some argument out there if you should say QRZ or whatever it is. I'm in the QRZ camp. It's a very clear indication that the contact is over and you're looking for the next one. Whatever you decide to do, develop a pattern, stick with that pattern, do it the same way every time, be predictable, and that will help the calling station know when it's time to throw their call sign out there and try to reach you. So here's that example.
CQ Field Day from Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima, Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima, Field Day.
Whiskey Alpha 8, Sierra Delta Foxtrot.
Whiskey Alpha 8, Sierra Delta Foxtrot. Please copy 2 Alpha, Indy Alpha.
I need your exchange.
Please copy 2 Alpha, Indy Alpha, and my call sign is Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima.
Right, okay, 2 Alpha, India Alpha. You're 1 Delta, Ohio,
1 Delta, Ohio, and just to confirm your call, Whiskey Alpha 8, Sierra Delta Fox.
Yeah, it's Whiskey America 8, Sierra Delta Foxtrot.
Very good. QSL, good luck in the contest. QRZ from Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima.
Whiskey 4 Alpha Papa.
Whiskey 4 Alpha. What was the last call?
Whiskey 4 Alpha Papa. Please copy 2 Alpha Alabama.
2 Alpha in Alabama. 2 Alpha Alabama. Please copy 2 Alpha Indy Alpha. 2 Alpha Indy Alpha.
Did you say 2 Alpha what?
2 Alpha in Iowa. 2 Alpha India Alpha.
2 Alpha Iowa. What's your call?
Our call is Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima. Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima.
Okay, Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima, QRZ 2 Alpha Iowa. Please copy Whiskey 4 Alpha Papa W4AT 2 Alpha Lima. Over.
Roger, Roger. 73 and good luck in the contest. QRZ from Whiskey 0 Yankee Lima.
Whiskey India 0 Lima Alpha.
Whiskey India 0.
Lima Alpha.
Whiskey India 0 Lima Alpha. Please copy 2 Alpha in Iowa. 2 Alpha Indy Alpha.
Roger, Roger. You're 3 Alpha Kansas, Kilo Sierra.
Good signal from Kansas. 3 Alpha Kansas.
All right, so that's the end of the clip for Field Day, and you hear that CQ confirmation, a QRZ to signal the end, and you're on to the next one. Here's a Parks on the Air activation. The park number is Kilo 2306, so that's our designator of where we're at. That's the entity, and that happens to be up at Clear Lake, McIntosh Woods State Park. So you'll hear a similar format there. CQ, confirm the call sign, signal the end of the QSO, and on to the next.
CQ Parks on the Air. CQ Parks on the Air. This is Whiskey 0 Yankee Romeo. Whiskey 0 Yankee Romeo calling CQ. CQ Parks on the Air from Kilo 2306. Whiskey 0 Yankee Romeo. CQ Parks on the Air.
Victor Echo 6, Echo November.
Victor Echo 6, Echo November, you are 5x7 into Kilo 2306, QSL.
Roger the 5-7, you're also 5-7 into Alberta, Canada, Alpha Bravo, over.
Roger, thanks for Alberta, and thanks for chasing us today. Have fun out there.
You bet, thank you, 7-3.
7-3, QRZ, Whiskey 0, Yankee Romeo.
November 3, X-ray, Lima, Sierra.
I've got November 3, X-ray, Lima, question mark. Go ahead.
November 3, X-ray, Lima, Sierra.
Roger, November 3, X-ray, Lima, Sierra. You are 5x5 at Kilo 2306, QSL.
Roger, 5-3.
QSL 53 Pennsylvania, thanks for chasing us out there. I think I heard a park to park. Park to park, go ahead.
Park to park, Kilo India 7, Tango Kilo Romeo. Kilo India 7, Tango Kilo Romeo, calling from K1059. K1059, Carson Tavern, Southern Arizona.
Roger, Kilo India 7, Tango Kilo Romeo, from Kilo 1059. I've got you 5x5 into Park Kilo 2306. QSL?
QSL 5x5, 306. You are coming in, 5x5, Southern Arizona.
Roger. Thanks for chasing, and good luck with your activation out there. Have fun. 7-3, QRZ, Whiskey 0, Yankee Romeo.
So that's the end, and again, really the same cadence, the same style of operation there as we're giving those exchanges back and forth. So just a couple of examples there. Now, you heard a little bit of POTA lingo, parks on the air lingo there. The first is park to park, and I mentioned that when I was logging with the SIG info field. Park to park, give these folks priority. They're often running low power. They're often running a portable or compromised antenna. It's just what you're doing when you're out there doing an activation. So if you hear park to park, you may work with station. In that case, I heard a calling station, but I also heard somebody kind of tail end with a quick park to park. And so I acknowledge that on the next cycle there. It's also not a bad practice to periodically pause and call for park to park or QRP stations if you're having a lot of strong stations out there and big pileups. So park to park, give those guys priority, and gals. You'll hear the term hunter or chaser. Typically those are home stations, but really anyone that's trying to contact you is a hunter or a chaser. You'll hear both terms. They're really synonymous there. It could be park to park there. The activator, that's you. You're activating a parks on the air entity. And in our case, we'll be operating from Legis State Park, and we'll have placards so you don't have to remember these numbers, but we'll write it down. For example, Legis State Park is K2303, Kilo 2303. You'll hear that parks on the air entity often referred to just as a park number. So it's K for the US, and the park number that's associated with that. You'll also hear, if you're lucky enough to be around after midnight UTC, the term late shift. And to be quite honest, late shift is some of the most fun you will ever have on the air. I'm not saying that parks on the air activation during the daytime isn't fun, because it's super fun. You get a nice pileup going. There's a bunch of people. It's really kind of exhilarating and fun there. But when late shift rolls around, it just amplifies it, and it is some of the most fun that I've ever had on the radio, to be very honest there. So I'll send these links out via email, but they are linked here in the presentation. These are recordings of the previous field day. The excerpts that we played for field day were taken from this. We went through and edited it, trimmed out the extraneous pieces, like multiple CQ events, just to compress it a little bit, and then also normalized it so all the audio levels are pretty even there, and know that that's there. It's a good opportunity for you to get familiar with field day exchanges, what it sounds like, what field day is from an audio perspective. It's a case too that quite honestly you could sit there with a notepad and paper and try to copy some call signs and exchanges as you go and kind of follow along with Clint as he's operating there. The other is the Parks on the Air late shift recording. So that's from Big Creek State Park. I was down there after midnight UTC. And this one is not the full activation audio. What I wanted to do was to give everyone an opportunity to download a file that you could listen along with and really try to copy the call signs that are coming as they're coming. So it's less about my exchange and what I'm giving, and more about hearing the station that's calling, hearing their call sign, and being able to record that in your log. So that's a great example of what you might hear on my printers going here. I apologize for the additional noise. I think I had a little power flicker and it did its thing. But anyway, it's a great example to hear and kind of practice tuning your ears. The more it's like any other skill. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes, and the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So listening ahead of time will definitely give you a leg up to the actual event. If you don't have time, it's not the end of the world, but it is an example. You're welcome to do what you will with those, listen to them and do. So I will send those links in a separate email, but know that they're here on the last side of the slide of the presentation. So with that, I'll stop sharing, and I will, I'm not sure what decided to print here.
There's a question in the queue here.
Okay.
I wanted to say yes, but I wanted to confirm it. Jesse asked, does the software also log the frequency or just the band only?
Say that again.
Does the software also log the frequency or just the band?
So the software does log the frequency in the background in the file that is actually there, but all that's required for most logging programs is to actually log just the band. So the answer is really both there, Jesse, is it does log the frequency and the band, and they're both in the extracted ADIF file that goes out. 1 second here.
So I noticed between the POTA and the field day, you had somebody next to you in the POTA, but field day, you're going to have to deal with the chipmunks and the monsters on either side. You're going to have the people that are too high of you and too low of you, and you're getting all that other noise, and you're kind of squawking along, and so that field day is a very noisy contest.
Yeah, it is. The bands will be just stacked wide full, and you'll hear that difference there. Between my late shift activation where the bands are really quiet and the activate or the field day recording that Clint's got. So, any other questions?
Say,
Feel
Paul,
free to. Yeah, go ahead, Cynthia.
you had mentioned earlier about headset recommendations.
Yeah, so some folks do prefer to use a headset. There's a few ways that you can do that. So for the yeah, you're gonna have to step on toes to dance during field day. That's very true, Klaus. So for this particular radio, you're going to need to have either headphones or an adapter that will take you from the typical, and I'll try to share here. So a typical set of headphones will have a 3.5 millimeter, let me put my hand there so it'll focus just a little bit, a 3.5 millimeter jack, and it's stereo. The radio actually puts out mono in this case. So I have a little adapter that will take the 1/4-inch output from the radio and adapt it to 3.5 millimeter mono, and that gets you there. So really, this is what we'd need. There's also on the mic side, I don't know if you're really insistent on a headset. Let me know so that we can work out the details there on how you would we would interface it with the radio.
I think we could figure out interfacing, but didn't you have a headset that Yamaha?
Yeah, so a model that's pretty common out there is the Yamaha Charlie Mike 500, CM 500, and what you want to look for is a relatively affordable headset as they go. This one's usually in the $45 to $50 range, but it has very good reviews. I don't personally own one. I've got a little different headset. I've got an Audio Technica that I use that I really like. But you're looking one that preferably is either on ear or over ear, and has a mic with a boom that you can adjust where you need to be. So The Yamaha CM500 is a very popular choice out there. If you're just looking for some audio for your ears, that's something that's really easy to do. These Sony headphones, I forget the model on these, are fairly inexpensive. They fold up kind of nice and fairly flat as you look at those, and they've got really pretty good audio, and that's something that can help you hear just a little bit better sometimes on what's there. So did that answer your question, Cynthia?
Yeah, I was just curious. It sounds like there'll be enough to grapple with, but maybe that'll be a reward for a successful field day.
There you go. I like that. I like that.
And I'll
Thank
make
you.
sure I have a foot switch available. So if you are running a headset, you still need to key the radio, and I'll bring along a foot switch, and hopefully we'll have the adapters to make it all happen.
Yeah, we'll have to confer, Clint. Does your ICOM use the 8-pin mic connector, the round one?
Yeah, yep, that's it. So I think I've got my my adapter set for my Heil that'll plug right in and play along.
Okay, very good. We'll get that sorted out. So
yeah, well, maybe that could be a time depending thing as an added bonus. See how it goes.
yeah, definitely. Again, it's really personal preference. The trick is finding something that works for you, for your radio or whatever you've got, and then being able to interface that with the radio. But if you do want to bring one, let me know in advance, and between Clint and myself, we'll sort out the details and get that squared away. So, any other questions? We've run a little bit over our scheduled time, which I think we kind of anticipated, but Clint and I can tend to get a little long-winded with respect to sharing something that we like and that we're passionate about. Hopefully you found the presentation here tonight useful. It really is pre-event training to get you ready for our hands-on portion here, so that when you're stepping into it, that your hour time slot's there, that you can really hit the ground running. Maybe you feel comfortable enough calling CQ and trying to run a frequency. It's fantastic fun, especially in a Parks on the Air activation, to do that. Certainly search and pounce is an option. The time is yours to use as you see fit. But what we'll do is we'll have you, the operator, at the radio, and then sitting back behind you will be the coach, either Clint or myself. We'll take turns, and we'll make sure that you're there and able to have a good time. You'll do the logging yourself, so the computer will be sitting next to you. That's very much what we'll have for field day, because we don't have separate logger slots because of pandemic precautions. But you'll be logging there just as you would be for field day. Last call for any questions. And Clint, anything that you might have to add?
No, I think it went pretty good. Again, apologies it went long, but we've never done this presentation before. We really didn't know how long it would take.
No, absolutely true. Absolutely true. So appreciate your patience. We will put out a link to the recording, as well as, like I said, the link to the 2 audio files there for your practice purposes. And with that, we'll go ahead and stop the recording.